Hey everyone, what day is it even? Is it Saturday? Saturday. I'm living like the allergy life right now. Anybody else have allergies? My head feels like a brick. like I'm cloudy and snotty. Ugh, it's been a rough couple days of allergies. So we're doing some iced coffee today instead of hot coffee. Sounded better. So happy Saturday, welcome. Still trying to figure out my new time I'm going to be doing these coffee with Kari sessions. Usually it was Wednesday mornings, my time, but that is now virtual learning time assigned by the schools. So, hey Leo, good morning. Hey Robert. So we're still trying to figure out. So I'm going to pop on randomly for lives, hopefully adjust and get a schedule set here soon that I'll let you guys know when that's going to be. Hey everybody, good morning, good morning. So I also want to say I have kind of a special, I like to call it a bonus time over at the merchandise shop on my website, karinorthey.com/shop. On that, if you buy anything, then you'll get the funeral arrangement planning booklet in your email free. I think it's a 12-page booklet. I haven't looked at it lately. I need to look at that and just refresh my mind what I put into it. It helps you just lay out planning before you go into a funeral home to meet with them to plan for yourself or for your loved one. So you'll get that as a bonus for anything you purchase right now. So, hey guys. Oh, you're in Reed City? I'm so jealous, Vic. That is probably one of my favorite breweries, Reed City Brewing. There's a girl there named Courtney, and their peanut butter beer is beyond amazing. So go over and get some if you're there. I kind of need to drive up there just to restock some of that. So good. Is a company that comes in and removes tattoos that people can frame from their loved one. Is it the Mortician who does that for the family? GW, that's a good question. There's one company that does that, and they seem to be funeral directors, and they've started a company to do that. We've talked about doing a video about it, but they are not divulging any of what they do to actually preserve it. So kind of there's a lot of secretive behind the scenes to the process because it's so new. And so we've got to figure out how I can share some stuff on it with them not wanting to really share a lot. But I would never do that. I would never remove a tattoo. Some people may be comfortable with that, but I would never do that myself. On somebody. So had a question from Mac. Have you ever been sued in your capacity as a funeral director? I think that's the only one on that page. Yeah, no, good God willing, knock on wood. I have never been. I don't think I've ever even been at a funeral home that's been sued while I have been there that I can think of. I'm trying to think of, other funeral homes that or even around, the biggest lawsuits I think happen when there's some big error with the deceased, obviously cremating the wrong body or a body getting thrown away or the wrong person in the casket or maybe fund misappropriation where somebody pre-funded and then the funds weren't there. So things like that are the biggest, I think, lawsuit items. And then also maybe posting of photos or taking of photos of the deceased or information leaking out, things like that. Can your pet's ashes be mixed in with your own ashes? Yes, they can. Catholic churches seem very strict about non-traditional music in church. Yes. Do you find that's changing? No. My mom's funeral was a struggle to get Twister by Mariah during the exit. Yeah, no, it's in a church that's every church. It's their right to require that you can only play Christian or, secular music or which was it? Secular, non-secular. I literally brain fog right now from allergies, but that you can only play religious music. You can't go into, I can't even think of a good analogy right now, but that you can't go in and play something that's kind of not supportive of what they do there, or that's the opposite of what they do. So it's completely their right at every church. I have some churches who are even way more strict than a Catholic church would be. Our body's ever so decomposed, you can't do anything about the smell. Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, the smell is the biggest factor. You just can't get rid of it. It's just there. And so you can mask it, but it doesn't work the best. Hey, Kayla, you're just like so close to me down the road. I'm about to sign up for classes soon. Any advice? Yeah, make sure you shadow before you go to school. If you have never shadowed at a funeral home, don't just sign up for school, because there's 80% of the business you do not see if you've only just attended funerals. So you really need to see what funeral directors truly do on a day-to-day basis. So get in and shadow and check out what happens at the funeral home. From Battle Creek, I think it's so crazy when people are so close to me right down the road. Due to cancer, my father had both a urinary ostomy and a colostomy when he passed away. Do these openings require anything different during embalming or prep? So they don't require anything different, and funeral directors may handle them in different ways. Some funeral directors may not remove the bags and things at all if they're clean bags. However, the appropriate thing is to remove, hey Robert, good morning, is to remove the bags and then suture up the opening. A purse string suture would be probably the best suture. So that is where, so you've got the opening, you would go in and you kind of go out and in all the way around the hole. And then at the end, you pull them and it pulls that hole right in together, and it pulls it really tight so that you don't have any leaking from that hole. And so that's really the only thing that you do. And you do that before you aspirate. So that way, when you put the cavity fluid back into the cavity, it doesn't come out those holes. So that's the appropriate way to treat them, is to remove the bags, use a purse string suture, suture up that hole, and then do the aspiration. Are funeral home employees bound by HIPAA laws or anything similar from discussing medical cause of death information with anyone other than family? There's no HIPAA when it comes to funeral homes. That only pertains to a living person and their medical information. However, we have our own code of ethics and privacy. And so if it is not public information, then it's not something we're going to give out. If you call, even in Michigan, so in Michigan, death certificate is public information. That's not true for every state, but anybody could go to the county clerk and get a copy of a death certificate for someone here in Michigan. Not the case everywhere. But so that technically is public information. But if you called the funeral home, we're still not going to give you a cause of death. We're still not going to give you their address of the spouse even. You know, a lot of that is just information privy to us. And if you need something beyond that, you call the family. But that's not for us to be giving out, especially cause of death information. Sometimes it's very private if it's suicide or autoerotic asphyxiation or something that's, you know, maybe the family is embarrassed by and doesn't want everybody to know. So it's very much on lockdown. Have you ever had anyone request something that wasn't legal? Not really. I mean, there's things that people may request that we have to tell them it's not okay to do. Maybe, see, now I've got to think of a good answer. I got to think of a good example to that. I'm trying to think. Let me think and get back on that one. Hopefully something will pop in my mind. When you shadow, what are some things to look for at a funeral home? Just watch and look around. Look at what other staff are doing. Look at what the funeral director is maybe doing tedious work. You know, how many phone calls are they fielding? How many emails are they fielding? How many different drop-ins are coming into the funeral home to make pre-arrangements, to make at-need arrangements, to speak to someone, salespeople that come in, all of that kind of business stuff that you have to handle as a funeral director, but you don't really think about when you think, oh, I just want to work with families and make a difference and have warm and fuzzies. There's this whole other part of the business that you also have to know about and become good at too. They told me the requirements were for Michigan, since Michigan is a dual licensed state. Thank you. Yeah, that's good that they gave you all the requirements, because there's a lot of prereq classes and stuff, but definitely call and see if you can shadow or, you know, follow them around. If not, send me an email. I mean, I'm like 45 minutes down the road, so maybe I can help you out. Ever had a delay in a casket merchandise delivery where running so last minute they had to pick up the item from the manufacturer or forced to make family make a different selection? Definitely if we have like a specialty order casket and the family pushes to get the service scheduled before we even know we're going to have the merchandise there. We've cut it decently close, but not too close. Usually we'll delay and make sure everything is there before we kind of even schedule for the most part, or we know it's, en route. There's times we don't even know the body is released from, the gift of life or from the medical examiner or from somewhere. We don't even know we're going to have the individual in time and they want to schedule. So it's always good that we know that, the flight is scheduled in and everything is on course so that we don't run into not having something. We've more times almost run into not having the deceased there just because of flight schedules and such than the actual merchandise. When my uncle died, we put weed with him. Was that okay? Well, in Michigan, it's legal to have weed. It depends where you're at. If it's an illegal drug or contraband or anything, then I don't know. If you walk up and put something in with your loved one, I don't know it's there. So just don't go telling me. Can you go in and just being an embalmer? No. The license is going to be either dual or it's going to be just funeral director. And I'm pretty sure almost every single state. You don't have to work in the funeral director capacity, but you have to go to the schooling for both. Colorado is different though. Colorado is the one state you don't need to be licensed. It's more of a trade learning for it. How can you tell the good funeral homes from the bad ones? Well, Robert, go watch my funeral about how to figure out if it's an credible funeral home. Go check out that video. So, Shannon, I am at the end of my life. How much is a specified cremation? I'm Native American. What do you mean by specified cremation? Just like a direct cremation, a simple cremation? Is that what you mean? I'll watch for your answer. So if a producer ever approached you, would you do like a reality show or documentary? Absolutely. That would be so fun, I feel like. I know there's stress doing those kinds of things, but I feel like it could be really fun. I do not. Robert wants to know if I collect vintage, like funeral stuff. I don't. I have some things, but not a lot. The one thing I wish I had was, so my grandpa was a funeral director in Minnesota and died, long ago in the early 80s. And he had an embalming kit and they donated it. My grandma and my mom and stuff, they donated it to the local funeral home. No foresight that anybody would want to go into the business. And so that's the one thing that I think would be kind of cool to have is my grandpa's embalming kit that, that he had unused. I think that would be really special. What's the main reason most funeral homes would sell their hearses? I see a lot of them that are pretty cheap with low mileage. It just said it's time to get a new one. You want to make sure you have the most up-to-date, your things are in good condition. A lot of hearses are not used for long road trips. And so you are going to have very low mileage on them. And that's why a lot of people like to buy them as kind of personal cars or, fun modes of transportation because they ride well, they have low mileage, but they are costly to do maintenance and such on. And some funeral homes don't even own a hearse. They may just use one from a livery service if they need one. They may not even keep one in their fleet of vehicles just because of cost, or they may have transitioned over to using a minivan with like panels on the back. So it just depends, different reasons. Goodness, Kari, you were at your father-in-law's funeral and your uncle's at the same day. That's so many. Okay, Shannon, so you're saying no organs removed. Yeah, that would just be a direct cremation. Your family could still see you before you're cremated and then you go for a cremation. It depends on pricing. You can find that for $600 in the country and you can find it for $5,000 in the country. It all depends on the funeral home. It depends on if it's a cremation driven business or if it's a traditional based business. So it's really going to be dependent A lot of Native American tribes will have funeral funding for its tribal members. We encounter that a lot around here. We have a lot of tribes based around our area, and we know that all of them have some kind of a funeral funding based in that they will send us money towards the funerals. So check into that as well. Jeremy, you're in luck because we're going to have a lot of water cremation video stuff coming up here soon this fall. No one sees the body. One person stays with me, but we burn immediately. Well, and then it just depends how fast they can get the permits and everything. So I'm not sure what state you're in and how that works where you're at, Shannon. But sometimes it may take 2 days to get a permit for cremation. All right. Let's see. So I guess all these pages of emails. I have an email in my email I hadn't printed. So this woman asks, she has a craniofacial condition called, is it Apert syndrome? It affects the bones in my hands, feet, and face. And I looked this up, and it's weird, kind of all the toes are almost bound, or there maybe isn't any toes or fingers, and definitely affects some of the facial bones and such. But she was asking, you put on a toe tag to identify, well, what if somebody doesn't have toes because of this condition or from any of a variety of other things? And so you don't always put on toe tags. And if there is no toe, you would affix like a band just to the ankle or to the wrist. Think about people who are maybe dismembered or disfigured, and you have to tag each individual body part as being part of that person. So a lot of different, you could use a little zip tie or some kind of other tag. So it just depends on the medical examiner's office or the funeral home. But a lot of funeral homes don't even tag, they may use a different system as well. I've not thought about writing down anything for my own funeral. I don't have a lot of money, and I'm not currently working, and my Social Security is my only form of income. Do you think I should make pre-arrangements or pre-plan my funeral? I don't have a husband or children, and my mom is elderly. So my sister would be the person. Yes, get things in place. Find a funeral home you want to handle you when the time comes and handle your services. If your sister is your person, then make sure she's on board. If not, then see if your state does a designation where you basically can pick any person, a good friend or somebody that will then be in charge of your care with the funeral home. And you have to fill out the form with the funeral home to do that. But that is legally binding, and you can appoint anybody, but it depends on your state. So check into that. And then also just finding out how much funding is. So even if you just start putting $20 a month towards your funeral and get that goes into a special account, into a trust that then is growing interest to be used towards your services when the time comes. So anything is, something it's going to build over time. That way you have a fund for your funerals. And then your third question, I have a programmable shunt since I developed hydrocephalus as a baby. I also have synthetic bone and 4 titanium plates in my upper jaw from jaw surgery I had in 2009. If I was to choose cremation, would these items have to be removed before I was cremated? I know you mentioned pacemakers have to be removed, so I thought the same was true for shunts and titanium plates as well. The reason the pacemaker has to be removed is because of the battery that's in it and the size of that battery, and that battery will explode with the heat. So there's now pacemaker or a heart things that they look like basically a pill. They're so small, and those do not need to be removed. They're implanted right into the heart, but the battery is so small that it's not a problem. So it's only the larger pacemaker size. There are some other like pain pumps that we're finding that have a large battery in them. So there are some medical devices that we're having to figure out if those are good or not. And we're getting things from the manufacturers as to whether they need to be removed. Any of the other items do not need to be. We would remove those following the cremation and pull the large pieces of medical implants from the cremated remain, and then those are then recycled. So hopefully that answers all your questions. Woo, you guys, gotta catch back up where you are over here. I asked a question about my parents above. My parents, oh, there you go, Tammy. My parents don't have life insurance. I've talked to them and they don't even have a plan. Can I take out a policy or just enough to cremate them? You can do an insurance policy on your parents, but I think they have to sign off on that. But you can just go to the funeral home and set up a funding for them through there, so it's all in place. So you can do that. Life insurance is going to be, big set amounts. But if you do it through the funeral home and it's paid in full when you do it, then it's a locked in price. So that's kind of the beauty of paying ahead. That way, if they live 10, 20 years, you're locked in at that price that you had paid it in before. How do you close the mouth when a person wears dentures? The same as you would either the needle injector or suturing. Sometimes the dentures don't fit in a person's mouth. They haven't had them in for a while, or they're just too big and bulky when you put them in the person's mouth. So then we would use that mouth former or a dental replacement or some type of a cotton. So we might use some type of alternative. My mouth is so dry with these allergies, guys. It's crazy. Has a family ever requested for you to paint fingernails? Oh, yeah. And we just use a normal nail polish. We had to do some gel polish the other day and touch up some gels. And so do acrylics, all sorts of things. So just as if they were living, it's the whole same process. Do you know any more on a date for the meet and greet in St. Louis? Yes, I was just thinking of that this morning, actually. I need to get with John, the funeral director down there, and set the date. It's going to be that, the third week, like around the 15th, 16th or something, either Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning, I believe. So I'll get that information out, and we're going to do a meet and greet and tour the water cremation facility there. And then like a Dutch lunch sort of thing down the road from that. So no, a port does not need to be removed prior to cremation. You're welcome, Tammy. Eat some honey. That's what Leo's telling me to do. The funeral home charged 10% processing fee to use his life insurance. Yes, that is normal. Because basically it could be one of two reasons. One, that just ensures that they're getting that money up front, because insurances can take 3 months or more to sometimes pay out. They sometimes take a long time, and the funeral home has fronted all of the cash advance and merchandise and everything money right up front. So it's kind of a fee for them to basically, you borrow their money for that extended period of time. Second, it also takes a lot of time to process the insurance. I have spent 8+ hours on one insurance filing. Like the amount of time sometimes you just have to spend on the phone and gathering the paperwork, and it's unbelievable some of the hoops you have to jump through. So that also could be why they're charging. But then the third reason could be that they're using a third party. One of the funeral homes I work with, they use a third party company. So we basically send the information to that third party, and they do all of the hoop jumping. And they will just have they will get all the paperwork together. They will get everything sent, and they act as that in-between bank, essentially. So as soon as they verify that that insurance is in place, they send the money to us immediately. So they basically are the ones that wait that time period for the funds to go to them. And when you do all of that, only the amount to cover the funeral comes to the funeral home. The remainder goes to the beneficiary. So we never receive this overage in this bulk. The rest always goes to that beneficiary. If 3 adult children are the next of kin of an elderly lady, is it possible that one of the adult children wouldn't have to be consulted or even informed of the death of the mother? Yes. Unfortunately, you just need a majority of the children to sign and to do everything, unless a state has a next of kin rule that says all children need to be signing and taking care of things. You're welcome, Melissa. In the cultures that keep the deceased family members in their home in an open coffin, is there something they do to keep the smell, bloating, etc. to a minimum until the skin has a leather appearance? Well, is it like in a home that they don't do embalming or something like that? and they can use cooling boards under them, or that's why you see there's candles burning around and incense and a lot of that stuff way back, because that's what they did as the person was decomposing. Yeah, Linda is saying she's an insurance agent in Florida and final expense insurance is a pain for the family to deal with. Well, that's why there's insurance and trust right through the funeral home. So if that's your only intent for that, like a minimum amount, then do it right through the funeral home. To me seems easier and more logical. And that's not a plug for trying to give any income to funeral home. But I think it's rather than having to get these big flat ones, that it's easier. And sometimes you can't qualify for life insurance, like standard life insurance, if you have pre-existing conditions, whereas you can through some of the companies that work with the funeral homes. So it just depends, but check out your options. Bye, JW. Well, I spoke with the landlord because bought my casket because I want to paint it and put it in the shed to store it, and he thought I did something. Well, Trevor, the problem is though that they could warp over time and could rust and things like that. So buying it this far ahead, you might have problems. I want to have my great grandma move to her husband's plot with him, but one of her children disagreed, so I was denied. Yes, when it comes to moving somebody, every person has the exact same rights to that plot, to that land. And so every person has to agree in that scenario. Do you know where the tradition flowers for the dead comes from? It is the oldest funeral tradition that there is. The earliest burials that have ever been found had flowers in the grave. It's just one of the oldest traditions that to the end of time, there will be flowers at funerals, I think, and flowers that are given for the dead. It's just something that is done. Let's see. If someone dies from drunk driving, oh, we already did that one. If you don't use a new scalpel blade for each person, how do you clean and disinfect the scalpel blades? So this has been a big question too, is how do we sanitize? Autoclaves are something that are used in medical fields. Some funeral homes have them, but not most. I don't know that I know anybody who has one on site that I can think of, but I don't often always just say, hey, do you have an autoclave at your funeral home? Mostly you soak the instruments, including the trocar, in sanitizer that is created for the business. Some people will use Lysol and other things, but there are sanitizers that are created just for the funeral industry, for the embalming room, and you sanitize them. So rinsing them out, the trocar can be rinsed out. It's not just clogged up with poop and stuff like people have asked me. It's a stainless steel hollow, it's cleaned out afterwards. So hey, this is Liv Red Girl from Toronto, Canada. Thank you for being here. I'm trying to think, guys. It's been a crazy couple weeks. I feel like very busy, making a lot of phone calls. Thursday at work, off the hook. It was so busy. Got to go out to a cemetery on Thursday that was one back early in my apprenticeship again. I had buried somebody that was kind of a huge factor in me wanting to go in the business again. And so I walked over to their grave and just memory lane kind of all came swishing back. So watch for a post on that. I'll be posting on that here this weekend on Instagram and Facebook. Just because some of those moments are really impactful, I think, as to how you go in the business. Some of those big first moments, dealing with some families. So watch for that post to come. My mom had a very wicked sense of humor, and after she bought a number of burial plots, she had us to the cemetery and lay down on them. So she see how the view would. I love it, Zane. Oh, Trevor, so I loved the embalmers and beers. Thank you. I have fun with Brian and Ryan. Like, we have a really good time And so, you know, throw in a beer and we're good. We have more of those coming up. We had a really good response to the crime one, talking about a crime that had some funeral director component and maybe some embalming component to it. And so I've had some people submit other ones they want us to discuss. Not sure if you guys love that series or not, but we have 3 more crimes that people want us to talk about. Maybe, you know, reconstruction that was done or something that was done during the embalming that was questioned. So we're going to come out with 3 more of those type of videos as well. So not sure if you love those or not, but for those that do, we have a few more coming. Have you ever done a funeral where there's no flowers? Yes, I have, though. Jeremy and talking about, I think there's always going to be flowers. There were no flowers at the one funeral I actually did recently, and it was just kind of different. Yeah, it's I always seem like I feel like I want to bring just one just to lay on the casket, just out of, I don't know, tradition or something. Does the prep room have a biohazard trash? Yes. What happens, say, if skin slip or anything can't be reconstructed, placed in bag, foot, or casket, or discarded? Discarded, usually. If there's a big hunk of skin, we will often just discard it. Do you do severely decomposed bodies? You do have to call someone in. Yeah, we handle them. Love your chat. Thank you, Duster Mouseable. Sometimes I wonder about some of the names. I'm like where they come from and where you guys, you know, there's got to be some stories to these names. It was a choice of the family, Lee. It was a very simple service. So Jim Froelich, I love the history and everything behind the funeral business. I appreciate you. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Some of the cemeteries in the big cities like Chicago and, you know, well, St. Louis or anywhere, Georgia and Atlanta, some of these cemeteries are so massive. Like they're just overwhelming. Well, like Spring Hill, you know, down in, or not Spring Hill, Spring Grove down in Cincinnati. They're just overwhelming that you just don't even know where to start or where to look. You know you're going to miss something. Oh my God. Yeah, when Trevor did his video, his bride-to-be put makeup on him to get him ready. Who provides the funeral pall, the church or the family? The pall is provided by the church. That is something that's used on every funeral, and they will have it ready for us in the back of the church usually, and then we put it on. Have you ever heard of people showing up at the cemetery for the service and the cemetery has dug the hole in the wrong plot? Yes. Is there mistakes on the vault company or digging company side? So I've seen both or all, where maybe somebody doesn't show up, or, you know, the funeral director didn't get something ordered, or somebody had the wrong date, or things like that. Sometimes the hole is dug at the wrong spot. I did have a burial recently. It was for cremated remains, and the family thought there was supposed to be a headstone, but where the hole was, there was no headstone. And we had walked all over the cemetery, couldn't find a headstone. So I called the funeral director that had met with the family. I called the cemetery. I was like, are we missing something? They're like, we're in the right spot according to the paperwork. And then we finally figured out that there was no headstone. But for a minute, we thought we were in the wrong spot completely for the grave. And so it was good. We could go ahead with the burial that day. We have had where maybe it was on the wrong side, like even right next to each other, where it was supposed to be just one hole over when they did the burial, things like that. It's not often that I have had this happen. I want to say for myself, it's not been very often at all. But I do hear from some people once in a while. It does happen, but it's not a huge common mistake. But definitely. Oh, Spaceballs. Yes, that was a good movie. Was it Rick Moranis was the dark helmet, whatever guy? My mom passed away 2 months ago. Why was the left side of her nose caved in and her eyes sunken? It's a huge guess for me to have to guess why in that situation, Roxanne. How was her nose caved in? Like it was pushed in, kind of like this. Her eyes may have been sunken because she was very dehydrated or emaciated, and maybe her eyes had dehydrated and they maybe just needed another eye cap under there or something to kind of fill her back out. The nose, it's hard for me to know without seeing her to really know what was going on. If she died in hospital, if she died under hospice at home, might be some different factors as well. The most expensive funeral I've directed, well, see, that's where the tricky part is. You have to look at what's included in that funeral. Did they include all of the catering charges that were not a funeral expense, truly, from the funeral home? Did it include the headstone and all the cemetery expenses, which is not the funeral expense? So there's all these things that can get added on that are actually not the funeral home expense. So it just depends. I would say like 13, 14,000 just funeral home expenses is maybe one of my biggest. All right, we're at 35. I'm going to read one more quick question here. Seen videos. Yes, Jim, I saw that. It's down, is it in Georgia? Where there's a burial in a parking lot. There was a burial in a Walmart parking lot. The Walmart's still functioning, and there's somebody buried there. I want to say that is down in Georgia. But there's a few different ones. Who owns a grave if the person that has purchased it has died? Where my mom is, my stepdad purchased the grave and he too is now passed. So those pass on then to the next of kin. So it depends in that situation whose name was on the property. If it was your stepdad's name only on the properties of those lots, then it would pass to his children. If your mom's and his names were on, then all of their children would have the same rights to all of them. Does that make sense? Her nostril was caved in. She was transferred to a rehab after breaking her hip. She passed the next day. So possibly she fell and injured her nose, maybe, when she fell. I mean, caved in, I just picture that it's like pressed in, like pressed. So maybe if she fell, she had laid on her nose. I would need to see a picture, I feel like, to give you a better accurate, unfortunately. Yeah, Lisa, the peanut butter beer, amazing, amazing. All right, I'm gonna sign off, guys. I'm glad I could hop on live next week. Who knows when I'll hop on live? I may try Wednesday morning early, or later in the day to hop on, but I'm gonna try and at least do my live video during the week. I just don't know when it's gonna be. So send questions to me, keep them coming. Next week, many of you have been asking me to get a Patreon just so you can get some extras from me during the month, but also try to help support that I'm doing more traveling and more bigger videos and stuff. So I think that's going to be rolling out next week. So watch for an announcement for my Patreon page. I'm a little nervous about it, and I don't know why. It's weird to put something new out there, I guess, for me. Always nervous when there's new things, but watch for that to come. I would love to give some new things for you and to maybe be able to do a few more trips throughout the year. So I will see you guys soon. And yeah, thanks for all the good questions today. Bye, guys.